Welcome everyone to ScreenFish'r Radio. I am so thrilled you could join us this week for an episode I'm really excited about. This week we are talking about The Eyes of Tammy Faye, the biopic of Tammy Faye and Jim Bakker. And but this week we brought in a trio of holy heretics. No, is that the way?
I've been called worse.
Author and speaker Colin McCartney, our priest. Do I say Reverend?
Yeah,
Reverend Shelley.
Not on this podcast.
I'm sorry. ScreenFish'r, Shelley McVea, and Ben Dower. I am so glad the three of you could join us today.
Godzilla fan.
So much. Godzilla fan, Ben Dower. Yes, they know you. They know
He's
you.
a regular.
Anytime there's a monster film, Ben is on. So The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
Wait a second. Is that why you have Ben on the show right now? Because of the monsters on that movie, The Eyes of Tammy Faye?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
There were a few.
Giant beasts.
You know, we talked about Falwell. Was he one of the monsters?
We'll find out. I can't wait for this. No, I'm really excited about this week to talk about The Eyes of Tammy Faye. Eyes of Tammy Faye stars Jessica Chastain and Andrew Garfield and takes place in the 1970s when Tammy Faye Bakker and her husband Jim rise from humble beginnings to create the world's largest religious broadcasting network and theme park. Tammy Faye becomes legendary for her indelible eyelashes, her idiosyncratic singing, and her eagerness to embrace people from all walks of life. However, financial improprieties, scheming rivals, and a scandal soon threaten to topple their carefully constructed empire. As always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers. But let's just dive in. What did you all think of The Eyes of Tammy Faye? Shelley, let's start with you.
We're speechless.
Okay. I loved it, but I saw a lot of flaws in it. I was never bored. It's an era that I remember well, and I remember that whole scandal, but I wasn't as impressed with the movie as I thought I would be. I loved the performances, but thought the movie could have delved more into the improprieties. And anyway, we'll get into it.
Sure. Sure. What about you guys?
I'm kind of like with Shelley on that one. I thought, because, again, we lived through this. I remember I was sharing earlier that as a teenager, I remember watching it. I thought it would be better from what I'd heard about it. And maybe that's the problem. You know how you go see a movie and you've got these high expectations? Maybe if I didn't hear anything about it and just showed up and went, then I would have been blown away. But I just thought it could have went deeper.
Yeah, that's fair. I thought the performances in it outweighed the lack of depth of some of the things. Like they did cover 40 years or something like that in 2 hours. Ben, what'd you think?
Kind of the same. Like it was a very surface level portrayal. Again, it was mostly focused on Tammy Faye, not necessarily Jim. So but again, like you said, it covered 40 years. I think that could have cut some of those years out, more so at the beginning. And maybe just started with the launching of PTL. And then that would have allowed them to go more in depth on the scandals and all that went on.
Yeah, it's interesting. It didn't bother me so much. I did notice what you guys said, or what you've all said. It didn't bother me in the way it does with some biopics. And I think your expectations were ruined because of me, because I love this film so much. Spoiler alert, I love this film. But I felt like the story they told was something that I could connect with. I think I said to Ben, I said, I don't know how anybody out who didn't come up in the church as a film reviewer would connect with this in a lot of ways. I felt like this was a really, really interesting look. I almost felt it was more a look at the church in general, in terms or evangelical tradition than it did about them in some ways. But I don't know.
Well, I think I would have liked to have seen more of the psychology behind it all.
Mhm.
Like Shelley was saying, it was kind of shallow. It could have went deeper. And I think that's probably what you're getting at too, Shelley. Is kind of like what drove Bakker, what drove Tammy, what drove all of that whole era.
Mhm.
Moral Majority, Falwell, Pat Roberts, and all that whole stuff. I'd love to know the psychology behind it all. What was going on for them to justify what they were doing? I don't know. I just thought that would have been cool if they went deeper on that side of things. And the other thing is, I was kind of hoping they'd bring up Jessica Hahn.
Who?
Jessica Hahn is the one he had the affair with, like the Playboy
Yeah.
girl. She ended up being
Really?
Playboy. Oh yeah, you didn't know about that? That was the fall. That was the fall.
That
That was very key. Yeah.
That's the key
Yeah.
part. Jessica Hahn. She wasn't even in the show.
That's when they started looking at his finances.
Mm-hmm.
I think they mentioned it once, just
Yeah,
like
they
a brief
mentioned a little bit,
newspaper, a newspaper clipping or
Yeah.
something. It just flew by, even though it was like really key to the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's a huge thing that I think they needed to talk
Well, that's
about
what the
in
money
movie.
cover up was for. Like he gave PTL
Mhm.
funds to her, like hush money,
Right.
basically, and
Yeah.
he took it from PTL. And they did discuss it in the movie, but again, they didn't
But
go
not
into
much.
detail about what it was. It was just briefly
Yeah.
like, I needed that money to make it go away, kind of thing.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
was kind of like that was it, and it flew by when they were.
So that's all that psychology thing too. Again, I like to have seen
Yeah.
that. What drove Bakker to that point with Jessica Hahn? And from what I understood, now I could be wrong here, and maybe it was hinted in the movie. There was a rumor that he was set up. Could have been by Falwell.
He said that he said no. Oh wait, no. He didn't say he was set up. What he said was that they had arranged for a girl.
Yeah,
So
I think
it could
that's
have
a
been set
setup.
up. Yeah.
No. But he says that it was his guy, like it was intentional. That's what I was impression. I thought it was to cover up his homosexuality.
No.
This guy set him up
Oh.
with this woman. That's what the impression I got.
Interesting.
But she's like the Monica Lewinsky of Clinton. Jessica Hahn is the Monica Lewinsky of Jimmy Bakker. So, but having said all this, I feel for that family because you see what they went through.
Well, did you guys know that it was based on a documentary?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Did you see the documentary?
I didn't know that until after I saw it, and I have not had a chance to check it out. And I think the doc is called The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
Yeah.
Yes, it
I
is.
think that's where they got the title.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you then. Why do you think they didn't go into all these details? Why do you think they skimmed over it? Do you think that was intentional? Do you think it was just for time? Was it about the story? What do you think?
I think it's maybe they had a less than skilled director that didn't want to go there, because I think it would have been a fascinating movie. These were the guys that started this whole Christian right wing, even though they probably weren't right wing, phenomena in the States that continues to this day. And it would have been really interesting, I think, to have explored that. But it's almost like he just wanted to do a biopic. This happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And I don't know.
Yeah,
Could
it
have
was
been-
like it was focused on Tammy Faye
Yeah.
to the exclusion of Jim, kind of.
Mhm.
Like Jim was just there, the minimum needed in this story to focus on Tammy Faye. And like I said, like if they cut a bit out of the beginning, maybe how they met and all that, which wasn't really necessary. You could have just focused on the PTL and beyond, kind of.
I'd like to have seen the documentary to see if they just tried to follow the documentary and put some more of a storyline, into it. But having seen what I saw anyway in the movie, I think Jim and Tammy, they started off meaning really well. But then when they entered into this crazy world of the Christian right, then they were in the wrestling ring with the big boys. And I think that's where, that's what hit me in the movie was, in some ways they were victims.
Well, see, that's why I sort of thought that maybe they didn't get into the details as much. Now, again, I haven't seen the doc, but in this particular story, I almost felt that this was the story of a woman who's caught up in a world that just doesn't make sense. And I think that's why it, like, I mean, I'd put in the one of the questions was the idea of the eyes of Tammy Faye. I think this is the world through the eyes of Tammy Faye. Which is why I think going away from the more salacious details, like things that Jim did, she didn't see. Jim, like this Jessica Hahn was based on the story, she's not involved with. He's telling her, so and the film opens and closes on her eyes. When she's a little girl, she's staring in from the outside of the window. You know what I mean? It's such an exclusionary world. And I thought that's why I was okay with the details lacking, because I felt like what it was really trying to do was sort of speak to that culture as exclusionary in so many ways.
I love Jessica Chastain's performance, but again, I thought I didn't get a good handle on who Tammy Faye really was. Was she this crazy, kooky, naif, or was she much more calculating? Like, I can't believe she didn't know that they were taking money and using it in ways that they shouldn't have been. Like, you can't be living in a house that looks like that and not knowing that you're sort of skimming stuff off the top. And I didn't think the portrayal was clear which she was, or was she both? And if she was both, it wasn't put together, I didn't think, that well.
But they did address that in some ways, didn't they, with the fur coat with her mom? I thought that's where they sort of
put it back on. She was trying to impress her mom, but I didn't.
But even that, her mom was saying, you can't use your money this way. And she's like, oh, this is expected. It's part of the ministry. It's expected that we would be able to do all these sort of things. Now, again, I see what you're saying.
It was sort of the beginning of the prosperity gospel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved Sherry Jones too. The lady who played her mom.
Yes.
Oh yeah, she was great.
Yeah, she was great. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Shelley. The beginning of the prosperity gospel. So Tammy in the movie anyway seemed to be kind of innocent, pure, just believed everything Jim said. And probably, in the movie, I would assume that, the movie is saying that she probably didn't even know what was in the bank coming in and coming out. And she just trusted a lot of people. But it would have been justified by their theology.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But wasn't she the one that wrote to Falwell with their requests during the fallout that he read?
Smart, eh? Remember that? Yeah, when she
Yeah.
spoke up, I remember
Because
the table
he
there.
says, I'm pretty sure he says, and I think he says it in the real video too, this is straight from the desk of Tammy Faye.
What were the requests again, Ben? Just for our listeners to.
I can't remember, but they were like a ridiculous salary for
really?
every year.
Oh, this is after to get rid of them kind of thing.
When he's like, I'm going to take over, you tell me what you need.
Right.
To live sort of on the down low while it blows over.
Right.
And she or it's allegedly she wrote this list of things, which was like, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and all these things that he then read publicly.
Right. Were they requests that he read, or was it like, I thought that they said, tell us what you're making?
I thought it was a request
to
live like after.
Because he was going to,
because they were losing. Yeah, he was going to take over. So what do you want? What do you want while I take over, kind of thing, to keep you going while I do the repair job? And then he read it publicly.
Some repair job.
Yeah.
Or hatchet job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what did you guys think of the portrayal of not just Falwell, but the Christian culture in this? We've sort of talked around it. Do you think it was accurate? Do you think it was too harsh? Do you think it was not harsh enough?
I think think it was the beginning of the Christian right. And I think at the beginning, like the Bakkers, they were sort of testing the field, and they weren't the fanatics that they became. So it was interesting to see the roots of what's grown into a huge industry where they really have become fanatics. But they were mean. They were meaner than the Bakkers.
It's like they delighted in the fall of the Bakkers.
Mhm.
Well, and
Yeah.
they painted. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I was just gonna say like that. What I would like to see is another movie about Jerry Falwell with Vincent D'Onofrio playing that, because that's a key part of history that has shaped America right up to Trump, basically, and will continue to shape America and beyond. And I think a lot of Americans don't realize that. I mean, yeah, we all know Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker, but we don't know the secret dealings Jerry Falwell did under the table with politicians, like he got Reagan elected. He formed the moral majority. I mean, we know moral majority as a term, but what did they do? What was their real issues? How did they use abortion to get Trump in the White House, to change the Supreme Court, to cover for desegregation is what they wanted or didn't want, right? They were trying to.
Yeah.
A lot of it goes right back to racism, really. The schools were desegregated, and they didn't like that. They wanted the freedom to discriminate in their schools, but they couldn't say that publicly anymore. So they took abortion as a key issue to unite around the Republicans, as far as I understand it.
It's interesting because there's almost two visions of the same evangelical empire shown here, and one of them is from Falwell, one of them is from Bakker. Bakker's building theme parks and rock and roll bands, and Falwell is trying to build an empire based on ideological control. He's concerned about every agenda. I love that when he says agenda. He's like you said, he gets Reagan elected. He's talking about that's why I thought it was interesting. Like Bakker here is really shown as somewhat of a rube.
Yeah,
he's not a maniac.
Bakker wasn't key to the plan. You know what I mean? Like Bakker's not really helping things, and then like they show with Tammy Faye interviewing the guy, can't remember his name, but the AIDS patient.
Yeah.
That's not something Falwell wants, obviously. Humanizing the others, the people with the agenda.
It's fun to say it that way.
It is fun to say it that way.
I gotta try that. The others, people with the agenda. Shelley, your turn. I want to hear you say that.
The others.
Say agenda.
The agenda.
No, but like, you know what I mean? Like Falwell, in a way, they're kind of thwarting his long. He's playing the long game. For theocratic control of the United States.
Falwell definitely had a political agenda, where Bakker had more of an entertainment agenda.
Yeah.
And I think Bakker had more of a focus on the good news, that God is good. Like we can sing song, we're blessed, we're blessed, we're blessed. That was their theme song. Where I would say Falwell, if he had a theme song, and according to the movie, was if we don't change things, we're cursed, we're cursed, we're cursed.
Yeah.
So it was very much a complete opposite for sure. And then you see Tammy just loves everybody, which is a good thing.
Sort of reminded me of Joel Osteen. Like he seems to me to be very unpolitical, but he's really into prosperity like Jimmy Bakker was. So there's been two monsters sort of born out of what must have seemed like a fabulous opportunity that the gospel was getting out to millions upon millions of people with these new broadcasting things that they were able to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And they have that moment where they're, well, quote unquote, satellite measuring. It's like,
Yeah, that was funny.
yeah.
And Jim just seemed, again, Jim didn't seem to have an attitude of bragging. He was more like, hey, this is a satellite. We're able to do this kind of thing. He was just kind of excited about it. But again, Falwell portrayed in the movie is kind of like, what? He's way outdoing me. And there's, you know, in that sense, I didn't sense Jim was bragging, or, you know, there wasn't an ego in that part. But with Falwell, again, I keep saying that as the movie portrayed them, because
as this is all of the movie portrayed.
Yeah, of course,
right, exactly, right. Like I don't want to be the guy sitting there tossing stones at these people. So I'm just trying to stick to the movie.
Yeah, we can toss stones at the movie. That's what.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's real people involved here, real hurt, real pain.
Yeah.
So.
And the movie clearly did take artistic liberties. Like, there are things that deviate from we know are true. Like, part of it's just for expediency. Like, again, they had 2 hours to tell 40 years, so certain elements are condensed and stuff. Yeah, but no, the movie's not 100% accurate to what happened, right? So
the thing I liked is it felt like more of a commentary. With any biopic, you have to take it with a grain of salt if you're looking for the facts.
For
Every
sure.
biopic does the same thing because of runtime. Unless you have a 19-hour movie where you can delve into all of these things, and sometimes you have those opportunities, but I mean, the reality is there's always going to be things that are, you know, people that weren't in a room or that are in a room, or conversations that did or didn't take place that are more wrapped up in similar, like that conversation between Jim and Falwell about the satellites may never have taken place, but it was to get across a point.
Yeah.
But that's what, see, I think in this one, I thought that was what I found so fascinating. Going back to Tammy Faye, you know, of all the characters, in a lot of ways, even though they say, you know, Jim's saying, God loves you, the one who's doing the love is Tammy Faye. The one who's exemplifying it is Tammy Faye, yet she's always on the outside. She's outside the men's table. She's outside the tradition, evangelical tradition, you know, having that AIDS patient, the gentleman on her show, and how infuriated everybody was, and we have to deal with her, you know. I can't, she's causing a ruckus, but of all the characters, she's the only one that's really seems to be offering love, but she's also the one that's sort of heaped on the most with shame by so many others. What I was something I was thinking about too. This idea of a shame culture. Why do you think that was so prevalent in this film? When it's a film really about life in the church.
Well, you know, it's a film about life in the Western church, or the North American, maybe more so in the American church. But shame is always connected, or control is always connected to shame. Power is always connected to shame. Those in power will always put people down to keep their power. And one of the ways you do that is through shaming other people. So you're not smart enough. Tammy, I think they treated her like she's not smart enough. And she kind of proved her smarts when she sat at that table when they first met Robertson, and all the men are sitting there, and then she sits down with her ideas. She probably helped that empire, PTL, grow. It wasn't all just Jim Bakker. It was Tammy and Jim and Tammy, or whatever. So, you know, it's just, but they shamed her, you know, trying to ignore her. So yeah, I think there's a lot of, you know, shaming the moral issue. Once you have a moral majority, when you call yourself moral, then if you're moral, then all your views are right and moral, and everybody else's views are wrong. There's the dog. But so yeah, shame is always, I think, associated with power, and you can make the Bible say anything you want it to shame others.
Yeah. And I think too, it's the Christian culture where women had a certain place, and they were beneath men, and maybe that played into it too, which I find is funny because they didn't really run a church. They were showbiz Christians, but there were women running showbiz stuff. Like Lucille Ball was way before any of this. Dinah Shore had her own TV show at around this era. So there were women running things, but I think the Christianity part of it played into it as well.
Yeah.
But she probably brought in the crowds because she was goofy and weird looking and wore extravagant clothes and sang. And probably if it was just Jim, he would be too dull for people.
One of the things I loved about the film is when it opens and it's on her in her makeup, and she sort of says, and they're like, well, I'll take that off her. And she's like, nope, that's just me. That's me now. And it's almost like a scar. Like it, I know it isn't, but I mean, it's a makeup scar, if you will. It's sort of like, this is who I am now. This is what's happened. But I don't think that was shame. I just thought going back to, I just thought that was a really interesting comment about going, you know, like for her, she wears that. This is who I am. But I just felt like every time that she's on screen, it felt like she's on the outside, whether it's just because she's a woman, whether it's because of her support of others. I mean, she seems so dangerous, but in the film, she's not.
Mm-hmm. Because I guess she symbolizes lack of power, and she's fine with that. She's about really caring and loving people. So her agenda was just, we're here to love. And so she's loving people that the moral majority don't love. So that's why they push her out. They don't know how to handle somebody who loves.
That's such a weird sentence, but that
Yeah, isn't that what that's, I know, yeah, they don't know how to handle a loving person.
Ben, you've been quiet, so I'm going to throw you under the bus.
Oh, I
hear what
me?
you think. Yeah.
Oh, well, I was partly quiet because I had to mute because the dog was going crazy. But
Oh, okay.
what did I think of what?
Oh, we're talking about we were talking about shame culture, but
Shame?
just yeah.
Okay. The shame culture. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I don't know if one of you said this because I did get up for a while to try to deal with the dog. Tammy Faye was forced to go on, at least in the movie. I don't know in reality. I'm too young to know in reality. If Tammy Faye was forced to go on and apologize for her, you know, affair incident, but Jim was not. Jim hid it. So that was one way at least the film showed shame heaped on Tammy Faye in a way it wasn't on Jim, at least initially. Yeah, that's one thing that stood out to me for shame on Tammy Faye as opposed to the others.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I had forgotten about that scene, but you're absolutely right. She's forced to do it, and he tries to cover it up.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about the way that the church is portrayed, or at least the evangelical tradition. I should clarify that American evangelical tradition has been portrayed. What about the issue of faith itself? Do you think that the film that is on trial within the film, or is it more about the politics?
I thought they even-handed in their portrayal of the Bakkers anyway, that I thought they would be much meaner to them and say they were really awful people, but that to me didn't come across, which was good. I thought, except, I mean, they were crooks. They did steal from people. And you could be really nice and have all these interesting people on your show, but if you're stealing their money, you're still a crook. I'm still not sure why she didn't go to jail along with him.
That's a good point.
But I
I
don't
wondered
think
about
the
that
church
too.
was on trial.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, it's in that. Yeah, I don't know why she didn't, unless probably she didn't sign anything. I think she says at one point that she doesn't really
Probably.
know where all the money is.
Yeah,
So
it could just be they couldn't pin it on her
Hmm.
in a court of law. So
yeah,
That's why I mean, the good thing was at the beginning of the movie, we said, boy, that we wish they just kind of rushed into the empire of PTL instead of all the preamble. But that preamble, I think, was important to show again that Jim and Tammy were good people. They meant well. They had a good heart. They started off well. And if you didn't have that preamble, then you wouldn't see how good people can fall, how good people can be corrupted. And so maybe it was a little bit too much on the preamble, but it was, it was interesting.
well, maybe that's
Cautionary tale.
one of the themes of the movie. Maybe that's what it is, but we're just focusing on Jim and Tammy, but like they rise up into this world of wealth. People like Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson, at least as portrayed in the film, are already there, right? And so it's like you get rich, you get power, money and power corrupt, that could have been sort of the underlying theme and why they spent so long on the preamble and making them so genuine at the beginning.
Mm.
It's funny though. I laughed when Falwell made the entrance into Robertson's place.
Yeah,
it was like he's walking the catwalk as a model. He kind of
I know, I loved it.
Slow motion, and he's
the
looking
slow
around.
motion swagger. I loved it.
I didn't know it was him at first until he spoke. I was like, oh, okay, wow, he's supposed. That's Falwell. Wow.
well, I think you talk, Colin, a little bit about the preamble there. I that to me is one of the things about the film that I liked. I mean, it gets a little long, I guess, in places, but I feel like there are this is a film that doesn't judge faith, but it judges the systems of people who manage it. That's what I felt. And even the fact that they're in seminary, they're in seminary and he's preaching, and the teacher's threatening her because she's out of line and all this stuff. But I've had conversations with people too, see that point to that and say, well, you see, faith is a sham because of these people. Well, there's broken people, and I thought the film could have targeted faith itself, and it doesn't. If that makes any sense. I think what the film shows is that people make mistakes, but there's also these systems out there as well that are really more about things like power and control at the same time, which are more dangerous.
Yeah.
That makes any sense.
Back to the theme of shame. At the beginning of the movie, Tammy's outside the church looking in. So from the beginning, she's excluded, right?
Yeah.
Because why? Because her mom has shame.
Mm-hmm.
And her mom is a woman.
But you know what?
Tammy Faye is a manifestation of that shame.
Of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Almost a physical manifestation, really.
Yeah. Exactly.
She was married, had the child, got divorced, and remarried. As far as I understood it in the plot, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's why if you come in this building, you remind them of who I am. Kind of was the message.
Mm-hmm.
But then they keep her. Like
they do keep her when she does go in. Yeah.
She goes in and she stays. Now she has this religious experience, but that impresses them. She's allowed to stay because she's impressed them, which again, which tracks for the rest of the film. It's really interesting.
Here's an interesting take on it. Maybe it is a film about lack of faith. Because think about it. If you have faith that God is God, why do you have to control everything? If he's God, if he's on the throne, I don't have to control it. I can let things go. I can trust him to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, so why will Fall have to control stuff? Obviously, he doesn't have faith. I mean, God's not good enough. God can't control stuff, so I better form a moral majority. So this whole power thing, again, it's trying to To me, it's a lack of faith. And this whole, this whole craziness of killing yourself, trying to put on shows and entertainment and all this for God, as if God needs any of that stuff.
Mm.
So maybe it's a lack of faith across the whole board. Maybe religion is a lack of faith. So you have to do religious stuff to change things, or else God can't do it.
That's a really interesting comment. It's an interesting point, because that tracks with, again, Falwell's portrayal in this as well. Everything is about trying to, build the walls, theological walls, keep people in check.
Because God can't figure stuff out. And now you need a satellite. Like, you got God. What do you need a satellite for? You need to spend all this money and,
Yeah.
Anyway, just a thought.
That's a great point. What do you guys think of that?
I think with that lack of faith, it's also a bit of fear. There's a lot of fear in the evangelical culture, at least in the United States. So that's why there's this desire for control. There's a desire for guns and God, right? Why do you need guns if you got God? The fear. Fear. Why do we have to keep the Muslims out? Fear. This is really all intertwined in that culture, this element of fear. There's Tammy Faye saying, we're blessed, right? And the other one saying, we're cursed. It's fear. Fear runs through the evangelical culture in the United States in particular in fascinating way. That even ties into the shame.
Mm-hmm.
The fear of rejection from people, rejection by God, the fear of, crossing that line. Fear is ever present in the evangelical culture. So I think that ties into the lack of faith. It's a different framing, I guess, of lack of faith.
I think, at least for Tammy, the way they're portrayed, Tammy and Jim, there's a headiness about it too. This was new technology, a new adventure for Christians, and I didn't get the impression they were living under fear. I thought it was just a headiness of being rich, being powerful, getting out the gospel to so many people. There was, I'm sure, a gloriousness about it. You're hobnobbing with well-known people. You're preaching the gospel. You're getting rich as rich can be. It's that temptation, the love of money, root of all evil. And I think it's easy to get caught up in it, especially when you think you're doing something good, which at some level they were doing something good. Superficial, and a generation later we're reaping the benefits of superficial Christianity. But I think at the time it was so new and wonderful that it's easy to get caught up in it and think that that's true Christianity, and it shows you have a lot of faith, when maybe, as you said, Colin, it shows you actually have no faith in God.
So where do you all think they went wrong?
Well, I don't think, in my own life, when things go wrong, it's usually little steps of wrongness that continue, ends up into a big wrong. So, the question of where do you think they went wrong, it can come all the way back to when they were younger, like what they were taught about God, what they were taught, about people who are in and people who are out. In the case of Falwell, you have to be a certain way to be accepted by God. If you're not, then God will judge you. Well, that's going wrong. God loves everyone, right? So anyway, yeah, I know. I just, it's hard to pinpoint where they went wrong. I think it's just steps at a time that leads to more and more problems. That's just my view, but I'm sure you guys could tell me some stuff where you see a turning point, maybe.
I think that's a good point, Colin. When any of us go wrong, it's step by step. And I'm sure they weren't thinking that was going to happen to them. But when you buy the next big, huge house and the next mink coat and don't think of all those poor little followers that are signing over their last check to you.
Yeah, nobody thinks they're the villain in their life story, right?
Mm-mm.
Nobody said, very few people, almost nobody sets out, I'm going to do this and it's bad. They think they're doing the right thing until finally reality catches up to them.
That's a great point. It's a great point. You know, it's interesting. We talk about baby steps and all this stuff. And the first thing comes to my mind, no, not what about Bob, Ben? I know that's what you were thinking when I said that comment. But no, what comes to my mind too is, again, that the culture makes it so easy.
Mm-hmm.
Christian culture loves its heroes. It's like especially celebrities. It's been really interesting to watch this. Christian culture loves celebrities. We say we don't, but I mean, look at, like, we take pastors and we throw them on a mantle, or speakers, or whoever it is, and treat them in the same way that all celebrities are treated. And then when they screw up, because we've thrown so much at them, we're so ready to spit at them. And now I'm not saying it's culture's fault. Everybody's got to be accountable for their decisions. I'm not saying that. And in this one, you're right. There is no Samuel. There is no voice. But at the same time, like, you just get this sense that a little bit more. We need to do a little bit more. And it starts off with a ministry, and very soon it becomes about self. The moment it becomes sort of about maintaining a lifestyle as opposed to their ministry, they sort of lost their way. But the culture that they exist in still exists. Like that scenario, you know, you see it, guys, with mega preachers. I read things on Twitter, and it's you know, guys spitting on pastors who have shown their flaws. You know, Mark Driscoll. You know, I see these things on Twitter all the time, and it's the same people that were blowing up the Driscoll balloon at the time, right? It's like, well, now we know. And it's very interesting to me that in a faith culture, we are willing to look for our celebrities and inflate them to a point that, and then turn on them just as quickly. It is so fascinating to me.
Well, in the fundamentalist and more of evangelical culture, there is that sense of, you know, any little sin is worth hellfire. So, you know, there's this, on one hand, there's God loves you, but there's, on the other hand, you're going to hell. So it's very easy to look down on people who have, you know, committed great sins and want to push them down more and more. And when you're in that culture of thinking everyone deserves death and eternal conscious torment. I think that's also why we see the death penalty so prevalent among American evangelicals as well.
That's interesting. I never drew that connection.
Yeah, and the drive to higher sentencing in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the ridiculous sentences. You can get sentenced like 400 years. Like, what? Like,
yeah, that's really interesting. It becomes a pound of flesh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to theology and all this kind of thing in regards to, you know, I've talked to people about, you know, Jesus saying, turn the other cheek, walk the extra mile, love your enemies. And the death penalty people will say, but God said this in the Old Testament, God said this. And they actually pit God the Father against God the Son. And so again, it's like, it's what you're taught, you know, in regards to those are some of those steps, and those steps will lead to, as Ben is saying, judgmentalism and condemnation and all sorts of stuff. So theology is an important thing. And so their theology, because we can create a theology to justify everything we want.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, when we fall, our theology may change a bit. It's about grace and forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that way before, but it can, so
Yeah.
It's that's even the health and wealth kind of theology.
Yeah.
It's like George Bernard Shaw said, in the beginning God created humanity, and humanity returned the favor. He created God in our image. So kind of curious. I was going to ask you guys, the end I thought was profound. I thought she spoke, I think, at the end, and it was very beautiful about grace and love and forgiveness. But then they had the American flag in the background and all this craziness that was going on still again, right?
She's singing.
I think there was making a point there about, again, it's an Americanized Constantinian kind of Christianity that she was trying to escape. Yet in the midst of it, she's talking about grace and forgiveness and God loves everyone. And I thought that was interesting, the very end, in light of today.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that scene. She's singing at Oral Roberts University, I think. And they keep cutting back and forth to the audience and to what's going on in her mind. She's got the chorus and the American flag drops down, but everybody else is sort of sitting there saying, okay, you can sing, you can do, but in her mind it's that American flag that is so fascinating in that scene. Because it's such a redemptive moment for her character in so many ways, but it's like in her mind she can't separate the two anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What's it's like I said to my wife when I said to my wife when she was invited to go to ORU, or Roberts University, I said she'd be crazy to go. Why does she want to go back into the fire of that evangelical fundamentalism? And yet she still does. She goes back into it. Hard to escape, maybe, It's hard to escape it.
Well, that's what she knew.
That's her culture all the way from birth, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is hard to leave. It's your community, it's your support, it's the people who rally around you when you're in trouble. But at the same time, there's that flip side. So,
and if you leave, it's often from what I've seen, maybe either of you can speak to this or not, but when you leave, the church just sort of lets you go.
Yeah, it's like you're forgotten.
Absolutely.
Very few people check in what's happened to you, and you don't feel comfortable telling them what's happened to you.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think when you leave, totally leave the faith, let's say, they don't check in on you, but they seem to be a little bit concerned about you, right? Now, if you leave that way of believing and you believe differently, but you still call yourself a Christian, I think you're seen more as an enemy, because now you can bring people to the dark side of Christianity. At least if you're an atheist, you're kind of like, well, they're way over there. But so in Tammy's case, she kind of left a little bit, because I know she got lambasted for her view of homosexuals and the whole community, because she loved them and cared for them, and she was revered by that group. But the evangelicals then saw her as an enemy. Now, if she left as a complete atheist and loved them, they wouldn't bother.
Yeah. Well, it might depend what she does.
Yeah, I mean, if she speaks out,
if she starts speaking out about it, then they might see her as an enemy.
Yeah, or evangelizing for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Challenging the structures from the outside. Yeah. Then you get the blowback. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's in a tough spot herself. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting. I would not go back to ORU. I wouldn't go back to the fire. I've been burned there. Why are you going back there? So
I'm still fascinated by the American flag
yeah,
and what it meant in the context of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, because we're all
Mhm.
Canadian, right? Like, it's a we don't watch these movies the same way we don't watch Hollywood movies the same way Americans do. Especially when it comes to the flag wave. At least I don't. I mean, I primarily watch foreign movies anyway, like mostly from Japan. So flag waving is a lot different. And the portrayals of Americans in both nations is very different. So I just found it very interesting that they put that flag down, and then you've got that conflation of the evangelical right and the United States government, the way it is so tied together now. I don't know what that meant at the end. Was that an endorsement that, Christianity is American, American Christianity are together? Or was that her stepping into the old culture?
The song too, wasn't the song "The Battle Hymn of the Republic" that she was singing?
Oh, it might have been, yeah.
Yeah, my eyes are seeing the glorious truth is marching on, and all this kind of thing. Yeah, and everyone's like, yeah. It's like, you better play the political game as a Christian down there, or else you're not
Right.
wanted.
Right. So that's why I wasn't sure what that ending meant at all. I couldn't read it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't read it.
Well, I mean, they put it in there for a reason.
It's in there for a reason. Oh, it means something, but I don't know what it means.
Yeah, because it's not like she's being welcomed back.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily. But
she's glad to be back.
Yeah, I kind of wondered that. I think, well, I mean, this has been. That's why I think it's interesting. Like, when it starts off, it's her with the choir in her mind. The flag is not there at the beginning. It is her and the choir. And I think, from a pastoral perspective, I'd say that's a moment of worship. Like, in her mind, she's giving it everything she can. And then the flag shows up.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute. I think maybe that goes back to the beginning again. We've got well-meaning caught in a cultural umbrella.
Yeah. And she was a performer. She missed performing. She got asked to sing again. It must have been a feeling of delight to go back and be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and good on ORU for inviting her to come back. Like,
yeah.
She's in a real tough spot because probably the non-Christian world, the secular world, could care less about her.
Well,
like what
they
Ben
made
was saying,
fun of her too.
and making fun of her. And then the Christian world is doing the same thing, pretty close to the, but now she's welcomed back. But she's welcomed back to an American political Christianity.
Yeah.
That's really weird considering where she actually ended up. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. And her second husband went to prison too.
Yep.
Yeah. Was it over at PTL as well?
I think it was over PTL.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
He was the guy that was the land. Remember the movie? He was donating, giving land.
Oh yeah.
Buildings. I think he was a builder, a real estate guy or something. So when she was sort of on her drug thing, trying to deal with her pain, and he was there, Jim was trying to sell, like, you got to keep giving me this land or whatever it was, money from the bank or whatever. She ended up marrying that guy.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that.
Not an easy life. And then she got cancer.
I know, eh? Sad.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, which is a great note, we should let's start to wrap up here. Let's screen it or skip it. The Eyes of Tammy Faye, screen it or skip it.
Depends who you are.
Yeah. Every evangelical Christian should see it, and everybody else can skip it.
Yeah. Well, maybe those who've totally left can see it too.
That's right.
Yeah.
With experience. We all have experience.
Those who have experience in that culture, yeah. I think it'd be much easier for them to relate in a way that people who've been outside their whole life maybe can't.
I say skip it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought I don't know of any redeeming quality. To be honest with you, I just thought it was just kind of negative. Did it teach us anything? For me personally, no. It's still happening right now. So, and maybe that's because of my, I saw it growing up, so it wasn't new to me. Maybe that's why I'm like, why? I mean, I saw it back in the '80s or whatever. So why would I need to see it again?
Yeah. See, I've seen it twice now, and I actually liked it better the second time, but my experience of it was different even than you guys. It was really interesting. I almost felt sort of seen. I was watching. I was like, this is a really interesting conversation going on, and I thought she was incredible. I really think she's incredible in this movie. I think she's excellent.
I thought
Oscar bait.
I thought again, I mixed up with the names here, but I thought, what's his name? The guy who did Bakker.
Garfield, Andrew
I
Garfield.
thought he was the guy. I thought he did a great job with Bakker, even though the movie wasn't about him. He was so much like Jim Bakker, more than Chastain was Tammy Faye.
Mm-hmm.
I said that to Jude. I go, I don't know what the fuss is about her being Tammy Faye being so great. She was good,
Yeah,
but man, was he good as Bakker.
as Bakker.
I thought, just from a guy who remembers the show, right? So I'm with Shelley. Like Shelley said, screen it or not. She said, yeah, if you're Christian or evangelical, you had that, you're in that world a bit, then you should maybe see it. And I see where you're coming from for sure. Maybe it's an age thing. So for me, that's why you went twice, Steve. You sort of missed it a little bit, but I remember watching it. So, and following it in the news and stuff. So I was just, seeing it again. That's all it was for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
And I missed it too.
Yeah,
I missed it
Ben's
too.
younger than all of us.
So did you say screen it or skip it?
I said, yeah, I was pretty much
You
depends
didn't
who
say.
you are. I said depends who you are.
Okay.
I said if you have connections to that culture, then definitely check it out. But if not, you might not understand it, kind of thing. But no, like I knew of the story. I mean, I knew about it after because obviously I was not old enough to grasp anything that was going on at the time. But I really learned about it sort of after I left. And I sort of started studying the history of, Christianity, at least in North America, in the last, post World War II, and trying to get a grasp on what culture I'd come out of, kind of thing. That's when I first really dug into it and seeing that Jim Bakker is still active to this day. That's where I did see bits and pieces before. Like I think I saw Tammy Faye's last interview on Larry King live. Because I remember her looking very sick.
Yeah.
And that was sort of my introduction to them, really. And I would have probably been in my teens then, I guess. Yeah, so for me, it was old and new. Like I'd seen all the documentaries and stuff, but I didn't watch it go down. So
Yeah.
I guess part of me too is sort of like, it's a fat paintbrush trying to paint every evangelical to be corrupt. There's a lot of evangelicals that didn't like the PTL club. They were embarrassed by it. They would totally go against it. I mean, majority, I would think, would say it was wrong from day one. And yet the movie makes it sound like all evangelicals are kind of these stupid followers. So that's why I said skip it. I don't think it's a fair, evaluation of event. Like here we are saying this is Western Christian culture. I don't know if it is. I think we're using a faint brush there. I think it's a lot more complex than that.
It's a portion of Western evangelical culture.
It's a portion.
And I don't know if the film was painted at all like that, or was just talking about that subsection.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know if it was trying to paint everybody. I mean, when you got a 2-hour film,
yeah,
and you're only looking at this aspect. I mean, it's easy to read into it as an outsider who's again doesn't follow it all. It might be easier to read that that's everybody, and especially sort of post-Trump, there's a large portion, or at least a vocal portion.
But even then, you know, like, and I don't agree with the Trumpers and all this stuff. But there's a lot of evangelicals that said he was our only option. We would, I mean, it wasn't the PTL thing, you know, and I don't agree with them even saying he was their only option. But I'm just saying that there's a lot of people that aren't so pro-Trump as it sounds like. They're just anti-Biden or anti-Hillary. They're not pro-Trump.
Well, the United States
I'm not here to defend them, because I would, you know, I wouldn't have voted Trump. But I'm a Canadian, so you may want to edit all this stuff out, Steve. Like, we're talking who are we to talk about American politics?
It's true. I never even thought of that.
But the media seems to, I don't know, maybe I'm being defensive, but the media to me on television just seems to paint all Christians as nuts. And I don't think that's fair. Or all evangelical fundamentalists as crazies. I don't think they all are.
See, I didn't think that this film did that. That was just
But that's because you know you're a Christian,
right?
Come from that portion. But if you're not, and you're in the audience, you're gonna think, yeah, all those Christians are nuts. Look at them supporting. They're either a Falwell type of Christian or a health and wealth type of Christian.
But see, that's why I think Tammy Faye is so important.
I think Tammy Faye is
that.
I think Tammy Faye took the other was the other one, was the representative of the other path. Because she was
what
still,
I'm saying is, like,
Faith
but
was
the
portrayed
fact that
very
she got shut out,
positively
right?
for her.
Yeah, but the fact that she got shut out in the film, nobody respected her. All the Christians didn't respect her. The people of power. I'm just putting myself in someone's shoes who hasn't been brought up in the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would sit there and go, these guys are crazy.
Yeah,
that's just my view.
Yeah,
Shelley, what do you think? I'm kind of curious.
I was expecting it to be a lot worse put down on Christianity than it was. I thought they did a pretty good job of sticking to these two sort of corrupt people, but started out in a good way. So I still don't think my non-Christian friends would be interested in seeing it unless they're Jessica Chastain fans.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm still saying skip it.
Okay. Okay.
I remember I told you, Steve, remember the right after I saw it, I started texting you.
Yep.
And I said I didn't know what it was saying. I came out like, I said, on one hand, it feels like it's condemning. It felt like a satire almost of the evangelical culture. But on the other hand, it didn't. And I told Steve I'm having trouble reconciling these two feelings I'm having about the film. And you said, well, I think it was a criticism of that evangelical culture while an endorsement of faith.
Yeah, that's what I felt. That's what I felt. That's why I think Tammy Faye is in this one is presented as a third way. I think she's presented as a third way, a way of, by the end, I think she gets caught up in the machinations around her. But that's why I thought the film was actually a pretty healthy view of faith and a scathing criticism of those that manage it.
As an ex-Christian, I felt uncomfortable with such a positive portrayal of faith.
Really? You didn't say that to me before.
No, I didn't say that to you before. You said be honest.
I want you to be honest. I just, didn't say that
that part was making me a little bit like, I don't know, like, just that part. That's why I can't outright condemn it as a negative portrayal of Christianity, just that subculture, because there was still that very positive element to it. That's all I got.
Yeah, so Ben, what are you saying? Great point. I was waiting for someone to respond, but no, I think.
No, so Ben, you're saying you disagree with Steve as saying it was a good film on faith.
No, he agrees with me.
I agree with you, because I, as someone who identifies as an ex-Christian, someone who's out, a done, if you will, and it sort of changed my ideology considerably. The positive portrayal of faith clashed with me. That's what I'm trying to say.
So you're saying there was a positive?
There was a positive one,
okay,
that struck me, as well as the negative portrayal. of that evangelical subculture, a particular subculture. Like I noticed both.
Because Tammy Faye is a positive one.
She's a positive one, and even after all that goes down, she's still praying. She's still, God help me do this, and it's sort of portrayed that he comes through, like. And so it was kind of interesting that it was not so much a criticism. I guess for me, like my objections would be more intellectual, right? Like, does God exist? What apologetics, evidence, skepticism, that sort of thing, and it never went there.
Yeah.
You can criticize the culture as much as you want, but that doesn't discredit it as untrue.
Right.
Right.
See, it's funny because I don't see it as a positive film on faith at all. I see it as a negative film on faith.
But you're looking at it from you're looking at it from the perspective of the people. Like there is real faith in this through Tammy Faye. In some ways, she gets sidetracked by some things, but I would argue that like she is viewed as someone who takes a Christ-like love of culture or love of people, not love of culture, love of people, and that is managed within the film. I think that's what I came away from it from.
I didn't.
That's fair.
I mean, I think she had a good love for people, but is that connected to her faith, or is that just connected to her personality? Is it her faith that's causing her to do that, or is it just she's a loving person, and she has to battle through this faith that's against that stuff? And then the whole fact that she goes back to ORU and all this kind of stuff, this whole American stuff, to me, that's maybe a misplaced faith. But again, as a whole, I'd say no, I don't see much good in faith at all in that movie.
Yeah.
I like Tammy, and I like the fact that she's struggling with her faith. But I think faith has kind of messed everybody up.
That's why I love this. I love this. I love that we could talk about these things. It's fantastic to me. But I'm going to pull the plug.
Are you sure this time?
I know. Let's try again. No,
I'm kind of curious. I got the middle part of the movie. This wore the white furry thing and walking. Like, what do you think of that? The golf cart.
If this
the costume design was great.
I'd take the gloves off. Let's go. But we're recording, so I thank you to all of you, Shelley, Colin, Ben. Thank you for all coming, being honest, and sharing as we talk about this film together. I really, really appreciate it. I always love chatting with you all. For you at home, a reminder that you can find us wherever podcasts are available. If you go to the podcast page on ScreenFish'r.net, you can download Fishing for More, which has some conversations about the film to help get the conversation started where you are. And as we talk about a film that talks about building an empire, a faith-based empire, you can like and subscribe us on YouTube. And
it's a ScreenFish television show with Steve Norton.
It felt I had to prove that I'm a little bit self-aware as we have this conversation on our channel. I understand the irony. But no, we will be back next week. I am so grateful to having you all come on and talk. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And for you at home, we started the conversation. This was ScreenFish.